Today at KMR Audio, we have Bryn Wildish from Audient. He's here to show us the newly installed and on demo ASP8024 Heritage Edition. Bryn.
Hey, Steph.
What can you tell us about Audient and the history?
Audient was founded just over 20 years ago by David Eden, whose name graces the console, and his longtime compatriot, Gareth Davis, who basically came through the industry together through multiple companies. David started at AdVision Studios back in the 60s, where he, moved into the design. At that time, there wasn't really a console manufacturing industry. Studios spec'd what they wanted and were involved in the building of them. Once he left AdVision, one of the first things he did was the console for John Lennon's Imagine album. Did consoles for several of the other Beatles too. Moving through the years, he eventually partnered up with Gareth Davis, and they founded DDA, Dean Davis Associates, very revered console manufacturer. A lot of my friends trained on those back in the 80s and stuff. Coming forward to when they started Audient, it was an interesting time because you were starting to see a lot of fledgling digital multi-trackers, the Tascam DAH, the ADATs. David was convinced he could build a console that would compete and keep pace with digital recordings, but still be a large format analog console. All through his career, David's adhered to keeping the signal path as clean as possible. It's one of the things he's renowned for. Move on 20 years and here we are still making it. So he got it right.
Well, Bryn, that's an impressive lineage. Can you tell us more about the console?
Yeah, let's go through some features. What you've got on here on demo is a classic 24-channel inline topology console. We've got 24 buses, which is standard on all the consoles. We've got VCA compressor, we've got subgroups, and on this particular one, you've got our DLC option, which we'll talk about in a little bit more depth later.
So, Bryn, take us through a channel.
Each of the channels on the console is basically the same. It's repeated. Every channel has a routing matrix at the top. There's 12 auxes, which are actually switchable between 1 to 6 in pairs. 2 Qs for sorting out headphone mixes. Then you've got split 4-band EQ. Now I can have 2 parametrics, basically high and low EQ, and I can switch those in individually, like so, and I can route them to the short or long fader individually. So I could have a very simple low cut on the short fader, and I can have the real nitty gritty get in and tune something out on the long fader, and I can split those across. The short fader here is basically feeds the routing matrix at the top. So it comes in from the mic pre to the short fader and to the routing matrix. Long fader, pan, solo and cut on both short and the long fader.
So each channel has its own preamp, its own EQ, and its own ability to monitor both input and the DAW return.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I always recommend people to do is to start treating the DAW like a tape machine. Set up a default template session. If you set up a session where you've got 24, 48 channels, where every track one takes its input from one and goes out to output one, and you work in that way, you can then do everything on the desk and you can use your ears instead of your eyes.
I love the idea of using the DAW like a tape machine. Okay, what makes this Audient console so special?
One of the most unique things about the console is everything is modular in the console. So we can build these how you want them built. So, for example, in this instance, what you've got here is 12 channels, the DLC, the master section, and another 12 channels. We could have put the 12 channels there, the DLC there. We can put that how you want it. We could have made it a 36, 48 channel. Options like with this one, you've got the keyboard trim. You've got the extended top trim. So you've got somewhere to put your near fields. All the consoles come on a stand so that the unit itself becomes a solution. We also do a producer's desk option. So, you can sit here and have somewhere to put your notes and your iPad. Very common option is to maybe have 2 of those side by side because you might want to have, like an Avid S3, people want to integrate with those. We can accommodate all those things that people want to do.
So when you developed the Heritage Edition, what changes were made?
Over the course of the preceding 20 years, there was a lot of things that customers had come to us and said, can we have this? Is there a certain way we can modify that? And, we listened. There was probably about 30 or 40 changes, things like the headphone output. The bus compressor actually has a proper view meter instead of the old little LED mastering we put in the bass expansion. There's a foot switch input on the bottom, so I can switch the talk back on and off with the foot switch. If you're a solo producer, you might want to have the guitar around your neck and be playing here and be talking to people out in the live room as you're doing it. The main thing, the big change, was the whole variable mix button section, which these buttons here control. This board was added. Now, if I hand you that, you can see there's a fair bit. When we say retro iron, that's what basically comes in on this button, these two great Carnhill transformers. So you get that lovely vintage tone, that glue, that warmth that people are looking for an analog console. And you could just click it in. Now, some people might like to leave that on all the time. It's pretty addictive stuff. But for me, when you're getting a mix just close, that gives you that extra few percent and just starts to make it, it's a kind of, oh, it sounds like a record button. Likewise, we've got a slight low bump EQ and a high lift to just give you that little slight 2 dB smiley face thing. The great thing is that none of these things that we added any cost to the console. We learned a lot, we listened to the customers, and we came out with the things they wanted, and the reception has been fantastic. A lot of people who've been long-term users of the console have come back and upgraded to the new one.
Well, it sounds like an extra that's worth upgrading too. Now, most of our customers run in the box. They use their DAW for all their routing and recording and mixing. Mm-hmm. What are the benefits of using an analog console instead?
For me, it's the simplicity and the visual aspect. I don't have to remember any shortcuts, any multiple modes of anything, or scroll up and down a list to find out where something is. I can look at it on the desk and go, oh, something's not right with that tom-tom. Boom, and instantly reach for it. You start working on the desk and time will pass by very quickly. You suddenly realise I've actually just not even looked at the computer, which is a good thing.
We can't get away from the software. Do we have some control of the DAW?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the options we do, with this one, you've got the DLC installed.
What does DLC stand for?
Dual layer control. In its first mode, it's a DAW layer. I have Huey control. I can do all the things you would expect to do in stack-shape plugins, automate, move the faders on screen, and work in a very familiar way that you're used to, but with the advantages from really nice long faders. If I come out of the DAW layer mode and go into its kind of internal mode, basically this becomes a little self-contained 8-channel mixer with its own 8 ins and outputs. I can take any of those channels and position them across any channel on the desk. So I could, for example, have these two faders here, grouped across here, and I can do that from the front panel with these switches. So I can actually, in this case, they're on. So these two are grouped across channels, subgroup 7 and 8. So these are inserted across that channel. So if I want to give those a little nudge going into the chorus, I can automate that. The beauty of being able to do that in the analog domain is, if you think about when you're coming out of a DAW, you're going through a D2A conversion. If I'm going into my favorite vocal compressor, if I start automating the level on the DAW, it's going to be automating the level into the compressor, which is no use to anybody, really. You might want to do that in certain cases. With the non-DAW layer in its own mode, I'm automating that in the analog domain after the compressor. Now, you could set that up as virtual insert points in most DAWs these days. But what if you want to set up a chain of things? If you've got it set up as IOs, you've either got to patch it manually in the analog domain anyway, or you've got to go through 3 or 4 different A to D conversion processes to get that result, which is not ideal.
There's a lot of moving parts here, a lot of components. Is it likely to go wrong?
The short answer is no. Once the console's installed, they very rarely go wrong. I go and see people who've had these consoles for 15 years, and bar the usual things that can deteriorate over time, like capacitors in the power supply, they're still going strong. The faders are high quality. Everything in the desk was so well designed in the outset. David really took his time. So there's an airflow in from under the console. You can put your hand on the console and it's not warm to the touch, and heat's the enemy of electronic components. So all the hot stuff is at the back and it goes straight out the back, the hot air. So everything is modular. There's PCBs in here that we can send out and get replaced if they go wrong. But once they're in situ, bar the usual spillages that happen in studios, they stay working.
Everyone will want to use this desk in their own particular way. How adaptable is this desk to your particular workflow?
If you're working in the box or completely out of the box with like a hardware multi-track recorder or a hybrid version, this will find a place in your workflow. You've got the door control in front of you if you want it. You've got the routing available here to be able to reach across and actually grab two things at the same time, like adjust the level of the bass and be EQing the bass drum simultaneously. And those are always in addition to your door features. We're not taking anything away from the door, but you're letting the console do the lifting work and being able to sit here and be able to balance things in a very physical way. It becomes a much more interactive process.
Bryn, thanks so much for coming to the shop today and showing us this console. If you want to know more or if you want to come for a demonstration, please call us or send us an email and we'll be happy to have you here and tell you more and show you more about what this console can do for you.